Good evening. My name is Sheila Rayam, and I'm Community Engagement Editor at the Democrat Chronicle, and I am also lead of the Rochester Storytellers project. We are so appreciative of you taking a chance on live storytelling and sharing your evening with us. Tonight, we're joining Humana and 5 Americans from across the nation to create community. Since 2016, the Storytellers project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the country. But we've canceled our in-person season as part of the USA Today's network response to the novel coronavirus. While it feels unsafe to be together in theaters, it feels necessary to be together online. So we've handpicked incredible storytellers and inspiring people to bring you a show about growing up. So now let's bring up our storytellers and say hello. First, we have Kevin Israel, Kaitia Saf.
Hi.
Natalia Rodriguez Medina.
Hello.
Scott Fisher. And Kia Roy.
Hi.
Hey, storytellers, see you soon. So tonight is not a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters. It's not a how-to talk, an inspirational speech, an educational lecture, or a slideshow. We won't try to sell you anything, well, except maybe a subscription. This is storytelling, and storytelling is based on visiting. You open your heart and your mind, and you pay attention to a person you care about and want to feel closer to. So we invite you to do that tonight. Some of the storytellers will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. We ask you to receive all of them because that's how community change happens. We believe creating empathy and understanding is vital at all times, and especially in times of uncertainty. And I'm so excited to bring up our first teller, Kevin. Kevin has an interesting story to tell us about a very interesting phone call. Kevin, take it away.
Hi. So it was 1987. I was 11 going on 12. And at that point in my life, I cared about 3 things: G.I. Joe, my Transformers collection, and soccer. But a 4th thing had started circling in my subconscious that was distracting me on a daily basis. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was always there. And then right around my, I think it was for my 12th birthday, my mom got me some G.I. Joe action figures. And I was obviously very excited. And the figures came with a promotional certificate. And the promotion was if you call a 1-900 number, you could enter a code and get a free action figure. And for those of you in the audience who are too young to remember what a 1-900 number was, they were phone numbers that caused a whole lot of trouble back in the 80s. They were toll calls, and they offered all sorts of different services. So this promotion came with a slip that said, I think it was 50 cents for the call, and you got a free action figure. And it said, kids, make sure to ask your parents before you call, which, like a good kid, I did. I asked my mom one day if I could call, and she said, yep, just call once and don't keep calling. So I said, absolutely. So I called the number, and I got a voicemail, and it said, the service you're trying to call is not active right now. And I was about to hang up, and it said, but if you'd like to utilize some of our other services, and it started this long list of other options. And there was gambling hotline, and there were sporting hotlines, and there was a fortune teller. And then it said, and now for our adult callers, we have, and something in my mind clicked on and said, I should probably listen to this. And it started listing all these adult 1-900 numbers. And I just grabbed a pen and paper and started furiously writing them down. And as soon as it had finished the list, I hung up and immediately started calling all these numbers. And I listened for at least an hour to these different numbers. And and they were adult hotlines. It was basically porn on tape, and just audio. So I was just listening, and I was 12. I had no idea what any of this meant, what they were saying. I didn't understand anything, but I knew that it was really interesting and I needed to find out more. And I listened that one day and I said, you know what? I'm not going to call again. And then the next day when my parents weren't around, I immediately started calling. And this became a daily ritual. I'd call and listen and call and listen. And when you only have words, audio to communicate sex, you use a lot of very descriptive words. And I went from not knowing any of those words to knowing all of those words in the matter of 3 days. But I still didn't know exactly what they meant. So I would experiment with them with my friends. And I don't think I ever got any of them right. But I kept trying. And so this went on. I just kept calling and calling. It must have gone on for a few weeks. And then one day I was in my room playing with some of my toys. And my mom came in and she had some papers in her hand. And she said, Kevin, have you been calling 1-900 numbers? And I looked at her with all the honesty I could muster. And I said, no, I haven't called any 1-900 numbers. And she said, I didn't think so. It must be a mistake. I'm going to call the phones to the phone company and dispute this. And she did. And she got all the tolls dropped. And I was shocked because I got away with it. I felt like I had gotten away with the world's greatest crime. And so I said, you know what? I'm never calling those again. And I didn't for about 2 days. And then, like any addict, I was immediately back and I was calling. But this time I'd started telling my friends about it. So when my friends were over, if my parents weren't around, I would have them sit around my phone. My dad had an office in the house at the time, and he had one of those old phones with all the different lines on and all the different buttons, and it had speakerphone. And we would sit around the phone and just listen to these calls on speakerphone. And none of us knew what anybody was saying. And we would compare notes and try to figure out what it all meant. And we were never right. We never had any idea what we were listening to. But this went on, and people in school started to hear that I had these numbers, other kids, and they started coming up to me and asking me if they could have these phone numbers. Now, I wasn't a dummy, and I had an entrepreneurial spirit, so I started selling the numbers to these kids. I think there was 1 for $1, 3 for $2. I was always trying to give somebody a bargain, and I was making a decent amount of money every day coming home from school, calling these numbers. And in my head, I was like, well, it costs them something, but I'm making money, so it all works out, because that's what you think when you're 12. And so this went on for a little bit. And then one day I got home and I walked by my dad's office, and my mom was sitting at my dad's desk, which was never a good thing. And she said, Kevin, I need to talk to you about something. So I went in, and she had a big stack of papers sitting in front of her on the desk. And she said, Kevin, we got another phone bill, and it was much higher than normal. And I said, well, what's the phone bill normally? And she goes, the phone bill normally is about $27. And I said, well, what is it now? And she goes, this month it was $600. I was like, wow, that is a lot more. And she goes, yeah. And it's full of 1-900 numbers. And we looked at the times and the dates of the calls, and we know that it was you making these phone calls. And I looked at my mom with all the honesty I could muster. And I said, Mom, it wasn't me. I was not making these calls. And she goes, Kevin, listen, I didn't want to have to do this, but we can take you down to the police station. And the police station has a machine where they can compare the voice on the calls to your voice, and they can identify that's you. And then you're going to have to admit in front of the police. And now I knew two truths at this point. One was I had never said anything on these calls. They were all just pre-recorded calls that you listened to, so they didn't have my voice. And number two, in the tiny little town that I lived in, they did not have this advanced technology of voice identification. So I looked at my mom with all seriousness, and I said, Mom, I want to prove to you that I'm being honest. Let's go to the police station. And I watched my mom's grand plan just crumble before her. She got really frustrated, and she said, just go to your room. And I went to my room, and I sat down and thought about it, and I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I got to stop these calls. Clearly, I've got a problem, and I'm not going to call anymore. And about a couple weeks later, there was a show called Growing Pains on in the 80s, and they had a very special episode. If you're of that age, you'll remember sitcoms used to have very special episodes, and they had a very special episode where the youngest son, Ben Seaver, had an issue where he was calling 1-900 numbers. My family and I used to sit around the TV and watch these together, and I had to sit through this entire episode and look completely cool as I watched little Ben Seaver go through exactly what I went through. But Ben was a better kid than me because he owned up to it. I didn't, but I stayed strong through that entire episode. About a month after that, there was an emergency PTA meeting called, and my parents went. They called the emergency PTA meeting because parents all over the town in the school district had huge phone bills coming in because of 1-900 numbers. And they needed to get to the bottom of this criminal enterprise who was spreading these phone numbers. And everybody was talking about it. And I realized I had started this all and nobody would ever know. And I'd lied about it and I'd gotten away with it. And now I always pictured someday when that fateful time would come and my mom was about to say goodbye to all of us forever, I would probably sit by in the hospital by her bed and I would hold her hand and I would look at her and I go, Mom, before you go, I need to confess something to you. I was making those phone calls. But I didn't get that opportunity. And not because my mom died, but because on my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, we took them out to dinner. And we had a really nice dinner. It was me and my 3 sisters and my parents. And we were all laughing. We had a few drinks. And at the end of dinner, one of my sisters said, hey, let's tell Mom and Dad something we've never told them before. And I thought, this is it. This is my opportunity. I can finally just relieve this burden from my soul that I've been carrying for almost 30 years. I can finally just tell them. And my sister started telling all these different stories. One sister told a story about how she had a party that she never told them about. My other sister told a story about how she had a boy come over and she'd never told them. And then they got to me and I laughed and I said, you guys don't have anything on me. And I looked at my mom and my dad and I said, remember in the late 80s, you got those huge phone bills because of those 1-900 numbers? And my mom goes, yeah, I think I remember that. And I said, well, I have to tell you, after all this time, I lied. It was me. I was making those phone calls. And my mom looked confused and my dad suddenly had this far off look. My mom suddenly looks at my dad and goes, I thought you were making those phone calls. My dad looked at my mom and said, I was. So thanks, guys, for listening to my story and enjoy the rest of the amazing storytellers you're going to hear tonight.
Kevin, I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing. I have an important question, however. Did you ever pay the parents back the $600 for that one bill?
Sheila, I don't know why you would even bring that up.
Thanks, Kevin. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Before we bring up our next storyteller, we're going to have a little commercial break. Humana is sponsoring Storytellers project shows nationally and now virtually because they believe that sharing stories and connecting as humans, online and in person, makes for healthier people and healthier communities. And we need these connections to each other and to health now more than ever. As COVID-19 vaccinations become available in communities across the country, Humana strongly encourages you to consider getting the vaccine and to discuss with your doctor what is best for your health. Visit humana.com for more about what they're doing each and every day to connect you to better health in your community. Now, let's bring up our second storyteller. Kaiti, how are you?
Good. How are you? Hi, everyone, again.
Good. Kaiti's going to share a story about speaking up in high school. Take it away.
Sure thing. It was Thursday, a rainy afternoon. I was in the cafeteria with my friends when my friend interrupted me while I was about to take my first bite into my sandwich. She expressed how sad she was that Eid al-Adha, a Muslim holiday, wasn't a public school holiday in Clifton, New Jersey. As she was starting to talk about her concerns, I couldn't help but look outside the window and noticed how gloomy it was. I quickly snapped out of it when she started calling my name. She asked if I was listening to a word she said. If I'm being honest, I wasn't. Let's hope she isn't watching. She said if I would do something about it. I told her I would think it over and let her know. Next thing, I went to my AP English class. I was counting down the minutes until class ended so I can go up to my English teacher and let her know about my idea. She said that it was long overdue and to go forward with it. I decided to walk home to clear my head, but I only ended up thinking more about it. When I got home, I threw my bag on the floor and went straight to the kitchen. My mom had set the table for lunch. I sat down, and while I ate, I would pause every now and then to tell my mother about my day. As always, she would say, "Wait until we finish eating, Kaiti." I mean, I tend to talk a lot, and she said I would be great for dinner business meetings, hence me being here today, sharing my story with you all. I told her that I don't think I would be able to take on such a task as a 17-year-old. She looked at me and said, if there is anyone that would be able to do this, it is you, Kaiti. The next day during class, I sat at my computer and it dawned on me that I still didn't know how I was going to start this process. So I said, what can I do now while in class? Print petition forms. Students began signing the forms and writing comments as to why they agree with this. Then I said, what can I do to have the entire school aware about what is happening? So I decided to write an op-ed that circulated around my school fairly quickly. I was receiving both positive and negative feedback. Then a day before I was set to make my case in front of the Board of Ed, I was in the library scrambling to put everything together. I remember entering the meeting and I felt that my heart was racing. So I signed my name on the clipboard and I waited for my turn to come up. When I approached the podium, my mind went blank. The only words I could utter were, "Good afternoon, my name is Kaiti Asaf, and I am here because..." I felt the blood rushing through my face. I started to stutter as I read what I wrote, but I knew I had to go through with it. I remember a board member telling me that we have too many too many snow days, and adding the holiday would delay the school year. I said, I want you to put yourself in my shoes for a moment. How would you feel if you had to attend work or school on a Christmas day or Hanukkah? At the moment, there was nothing but silence in the room. I went to about 10 meetings total over a span of 6 months. At my 9th meeting, I was very sick to the point where you could barely hear my voice. My mother came with me that day. I once again brought up the issue, and as I was passing out the folders to each board member, I tripped and almost fell on my face. Ouch. I felt so humiliated. I took a moment to collect myself. My mother made sure to let them know that I worked hard and I was ill, but that I still insisted to attend. That evening, they let me know that the vote on my proposal would happen at the next and final meeting. On March 9th, 2016, I went into the same room I entered for the past 9 times, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being there for the very first. I sat down, but I couldn't sit still. My eyes were fixated on the piece of paper the president was reading off of. The board members would read different codes and voted yes and no based off of them. I didn't quite understand what they meant, even though I had the agenda in hand. Maybe because I was so nervous of the outcome. I went straight to the podium once again and asked what the vote was on Eid al-Adha. The president looked at me and all these thoughts rushed through my mind in that split second when he said, yes. A huge smile came across my face. Everyone in the audience erupted in applause. I did it. We did it. I couldn't contain my enthusiasm. I went to my mother and gave her a big hug. When we went back to the car, I blasted a Taylor Swift song. I started picturing what was going to happen the next day. I was going to walk the walk and talk the talk, and while I'm at it, flip my hijab. In reality, though, what ended up happening was I entered school like any normal day. What matters now is that Muslim students can take off on Eid al-Adha and not have to compromise between their faith and education. Young people are the future, and they have the power to bring about change. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Thank you, Kaiti, so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for, using your voice. That was awesome.
Thanks.
So if you enjoyed Kaiti's story or Kevin's story, you can show a little love. How do you do that? Give them a clap. And that means you can hit the like button or reaction buttons. Next up, we're going to bring up our third storyteller, my colleague, Natalia.
Hello.
Hey, Natalia, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Natalia is going to share a little story about a life lesson she learned. Take it away.
So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico in the metropolitan area. And growing up in Puerto Rico is not like what a lot of people expect. It's not just beaches and beautiful landscapes and amazing foods. It's mostly just really normal, regular life. We go to school, we go to work, we do everything everyone else does, but sometimes over the weekend, you just go to the beach. And so when I was in middle school and high school, I had the privilege of going to private school. And there, I got to connect with so many people, and I got really good English language education. And growing up in Puerto Rico, which is a part of the United States, you have like this, I don't know, this need to try to correct your English and to be the best English speaker you can. So I made it my personal mission to just erase my accent. I did not want to have an accent when I spoke English. I wanted to be super cool, like a normal American teen I had seen on the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. And when I was in high school, I went to this American high school that had lockers, and that's kind of like how I knew that I was American. It had like these really cool lockers, and I had pictures of like my favorite emo bands and of the Jonas Brothers, but I'm not going to say which one because it's embarrassing. But anyway, I kept working hard to make sure that when I spoke English, it was as perfect as possible. I would use Twitter, I would use Tumblr, I would use all these things that would connect me with America. And I just wanted to be the coolest American teenager I could. And when you're growing up in Puerto Rico, what you get taught in school is that the US is the best place on the planet. And we got taught that we got saved by the United States from Spain, and that's why we're also American. And it was this whole cool thing. And I worked really hard. And when I was 16, I went to my siblings' house in South Carolina, and I went with them to this really cool party with other adults. And I remember one of the adults telling me, wow, your English is so good. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. An American thinks my English is good. I have done it. I have achieved it. I am awesome. And it was like the highest compliment you could get. And when I went back to Puerto Rico, I was just like beaming with pride, beaming with joy. I was so happy. And then I went to college. And when I went to college, I went to the University of Puerto Rico in the metropolitan area, the Rio Piedras campus. Go Gallitos. Yes, my mascot is a chicken, and I'm very proud of that. And there, I got to learn a little bit more of Puerto Rican history, like the real thing. I got to learn about U.S. intervention. I got to learn more thoroughly about colonization and the impact it's had on the island economically, socially, culturally. And I got to learn that basically the United States role in Puerto Rico isn't exactly the most beautiful, amazing savior thing. So it was a really complicated thing. I had spent so much time trying to be this really cool American, but then I got to college and it was like very conflicting of like, oh, I want to be this cool person, but I also can't ignore everything that's happened in Puerto Rico politically. And then I went to grad school in New York City. I got accepted to this program. I was doing Spanish language journalism. It was a really cool university, the City University of New York graduate program, really cool. I got to meet so many people. My closest friends were from the international program. So I had friends from Sweden, from India, from all over Latin America. And it was just like the most amazing experience. And I also got to make a lot of really cool American friends. But it wasn't really, as I grew and as I spent more time with people, I kept getting the same compliment over and over again. Wow, your English is so good. And there came a point where it was just like, this doesn't really sound like a compliment anymore. It's like, what are you trying to imply that just because my English is good, it makes me somehow, better than all other Latin Americans? I don't know. I began to develop like a weird taste in my mouth every once someone said it to me, and it just became so annoying and taxing every time someone would say it. It was just like, oh my God, so what? What if if it was bad, who cares? And so I tended to stick more to the international folks. Culturally, it was just easier to bond with people because when you grew up in Puerto Rico, you're American, but you're not really American. And so I kind of vibed with them more. But I was always faced with this reality that no matter what, I was an American citizen and they were not. And they had to struggle with all these immigration issues that I didn't really have to go through. And so I was like living this dual life of like a migrant, but not an immigrant, but still feeling more in tune with them than I was with the Americans. It was just a lot of complicated feelings that I feel like shaped me to be the person I am. And somehow, and a friend of mine told me, and I resent her for this, but I don't, I love her. She said, oh, you're kind of popular now. I was like, oh God, no, I hate that. But I think she was right, because I got chosen to be student speaker for my commencement. And that was like the biggest honor. And I spent months, literally months, working on this amazing speech about like inclusivity and diversity in journalism, how it's supposed to be for the better of journalism, not just like to rack up numbers or anything. Like I had like this whole amazing speech, and I was going to talk about my culture. And I remember specifically mentioning how like you should treat people of other cultures with respect, and like telling someone, oh, your English is so good is not really a compliment you think it is. I remember people saying something like, oh, people always ask me what the best tacos in New York City are. Like, I don't know, ask a Mexican. I'm not Mexican. Oh, what's the best spicy food? I don't know. We don't eat spicy food. Ask people who cook like that. And I pointed out all these things in my speech. It was a really hard thing for me to do because I didn't consider myself a good public speaker. I cursed too much. And it was just like trying to rein myself in was really hard. But I did it, and it was like amazing. And it was terrifying the entire time, but I did it, and my friends applauded, and then I graduated. And then afterwards we had the celebration and commencement, and it was so cool. And it was like very overwhelming because everyone kept complimenting me like, oh my God, your speech was so good. I was like, oh my God, I know, thank you. I was like really proud of myself, but also really excited to like have that opportunity to say my point of view in journalism and all these things. And as time had passed, I was starving. I wanted to drink a beer. Like I just wanted to like hang out and stop being student speaker. I just wanted to be Natalia. So I went to like the buffet area, and I got my food, I got my beer, and I was just like really happy. And then this mom, this classmate's mother comes up to me. She had the thickest Long Island accent, which I'm not going to imitate because I don't do accents, ironically. And then she goes up to me and she's like, oh, honey, you know that thing you said about your English not being like, don't listen to that. No, you're an American. Your English is fantastic and you should feel American. And like, no, don't say that. And I was just kind of stunned that the point of my speech just kind of like went way over her head, that me telling you, oh, this is kind of like a microaggression. Don't do that. And to her, she took it as an invitation to like validate my Americanness and my English. And I was like, oh God, like, why would you say that if like you just completely missed the whole point of what I've spent months working on? And it was so incredibly frustrating. And I went from like being on this super high to like just being honestly pissed off. I was really mad. And I remember going to my best friend and being just like, this just happened and I'm so mad. But we forgot about it and drank about it and had a great time afterwards anyway. And then when I was preparing for this story, I remember thinking, wow, I got exactly what 16-year-old Natalia wanted. I got to be the cool teenage American person. And now that I have it, it sucks. Like, I feel like I erased my culture. I feel like people won't be able to know I'm Puerto Rican unless I say it. And it just, I can't tell you, like, I have the answer to how I feel. I don't know if I feel good about that. I don't know if I know I don't feel good about it, but I think it's going to have repercussions in how I live my life for the rest of forever, because maybe getting what I always wanted isn't the best thing. Maybe being the most Americanized version of myself that I can be is not what's best for me. And I sort of have some of those regrets that I took the Puerto Rican-ness out of the way I speak, but that's why I try to be as Puerto Rican as possible in my other ways. And yeah, if you've ever said something like that to someone, like, oh, your English is so good, don't feel like crap now. It happened. It's in the past. Just try to remember that maybe there are different ways to be that doesn't define how good of a person you are. And it doesn't really make you a better quote unquote American or not. There's just multiple ways to be a person, to be good, and accent or not, it doesn't really define who you are. So that's my story.
Well, Natalia, thank you so much for just sharing that and for helping us to build understanding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So our next storyteller is also a colleague in journalism of mine, Scott. And Scott's going to share a pretty interesting story that has to do with music and other cool things. Scott, take it away.
Thank you. So it was 1981, and I lived in the suburbs of Wilmington, Delaware, and I attended John Dickinson High School. So you know that old song, Walk This Way by Aerosmith, or Run DMC, depending on your musical orientation? I was a high school loser, never made it with the ladies. Yeah, that was me through most of high school. That is, until I joined a rock band called Paragon. I played the drums. We practiced for months and got good enough to play actual gigs. And it's not always true that joining a band gets you girls, but for me, it was. Eric was our lead singer, and his girlfriend's name was Paula, and her best friend was Marshall. Now, Marshall was amazing. She was smart and creative and funny and exotic because she was from Texas. She was blonde and beautiful and just downright hot with tight jeans and a little leather jacket. And she wanted to go out with me. I couldn't believe it. I felt like that guy in the Tom Petty song, even the losers get lucky sometimes. So we dated and fell in love and became inseparable. She was at every gig and every band practice, and I was always over at her place with her and her mom and her brother Sparky. Now, our band made a little bit of money, but not much. So I got a job at a nearby Exxon station. It was owned by a guy who, for the purposes of this story, I'll call Joseph, because he looked just like Joseph Stalin, right down to the big trapezoid mustache. Now, Joseph was a real hard ass to his pump jockeys. Your uniform had to be just right. And I had long hair, so he made me, tuck it up under my Exxon cap. And Joseph was a stickler for service. This was before the days of self-serve gas pumps. So the pump jockeys had to clean the windshield and check the oil and the tire pressure for every single car that came in. Excuse me. Joseph was kind of cruel too. You had to stand outside waiting for customers. Heat of winter, cold of winter, to stand out there in the weather because he thought that would draw drivers into his station. So anyway, senior year came and rolled along in a haze of music in Marshall, and then came spring, and everyone at school was talking about prom plans. And Eric and I were like, oh, prom is so lame, we're not even going. Oh, we're going to prom, all right, said Marshall. Paula and I have big plans. But here's the thing. They wouldn't tell us what the plans were. Our instructions were, get a tux, get flowers, have money for dinner, be ready and waiting at your house at 4 p.m. So I can handle that. I got a killer tux. My mom was a pro floral designer, so the flowers were awesome and free. So I was all set, right? Well, no. I forgot to ask Joseph for the day off work. And he was totally anal about his schedule. It was set 2 months out. If you were scheduled, you had to show up. No asking off, no switching. Let this be a life lesson in planning ahead, he would say. So when I asked off for prom, no dice. But Joseph, I whined, it's prom. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I pretended like I really cared about prom. I told him, my girlfriend will break up with me. No, he said, next time you will think ahead. Someday you'll thank me for this. I kept working on him for 3 weeks solid, but he was implacable. So what should I do? Lose my job or disappoint Marshall? Well, you can probably guess what I did. So I was standing outside my house when the long white limo pulled up. And I couldn't believe it. This was before getting a limo for prom was a common thing. Then we went over to Eric's house, and on the way to pick up the girls, we were raging in the back seat like rock stars. The music was cranked up, and we were standing up through the sunroof playing air guitar. We picked up the girls and did the photo shoot at Marshall's place, and then we were off. Eric and I had no idea where we were going for dinner. So we were pretty surprised when the limo pulled into the McDonald's parking lot. And Marshall's brother Sparky was standing outside the door in a tuxedo with a white towel over his arm. He opened the door and welcomed us with a French accent. He escorted us in and showed us to our table, which had a white tablecloth and flowers and candles. He took our orders like a snooty waiter, going over the specials and asking if we'd like to see the soda list. He played the role straight and perfect, we didn't even crack a smile. So I ordered a Big Mac and fries, and then I sent the fries back because there was a burnt one. And we were just totally cracking up, soaking in the experience. And Marshall's mom had told the local newspaper about the stunt, and a photographer came out to take photos. And the McDonald's framed the clipping and hung on the wall near the bathrooms for years until they remodeled. So after dinner, we had some time to kill. So we drove around in our neighborhoods and showed off for our friends. And then I got an idea. Hey, I said to the limo driver, do you need any gas? Not really, he said. Would you top it off as a favor to me? I'll pay for it. So Joseph was standing out front waiting for customers. At least he walked his own talk. He couldn't see inside the back because the windows were tinted. He topped it off and scurried around the limo, squeegeeing the windshield and checking the oil and the tire pressure. And when he was taking the money, the driver said, "Sir, my client would like a word with you." And he rolled down the rear window. Joseph stuck his big Stalin mustache in the rear window, and it drooped into a Fu Manchu when he saw me, dressed to kill, with the prettiest girl in school wrapped around me in a sparkling dress. "Joseph, my good man," I said, "you can't fire me because I quit. Oh, and by the way, you missed a spot on the windshield." And we peeled out, cracking up. At the prom, we danced and laughed and told our friends about our McDonald's and Joseph adventures. And the next day, we all went to the beach, though sadly not in a limo. So it turned out that the prom I didn't want to go to turned out to be one of the best nights of my life. Now, my career plans were basically rock star. That was it, no other plans. But the band never took off, and my dad basically forced me to go to college. And Marshall went to a different school about an hour away, and we broke up by the end of freshman year. And that summer, I needed a job, and I got one at a Texaco right across the street from Joseph's station. I'd sit in the Texaco's air-conditioned office and chuckle at Joseph scurrying around his lot in the heat. It's funny, though. I did learn a life lesson from him. I became a pretty careful long-range planner. Thanks, Joseph.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing that. Tell me, are you still playing music? Have you held on to the dream?
The dream is gone, but I still play, and it's just for fun. And I do play in a local band here in New York. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
For that, the J.C. Fisher Band, we're playing Saturday.
Shameless plug. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Before we bring up our next storyteller, I want to take a second to say thank you to our subscribers because you support community journalism. For those of you who aren't subscribers, we appreciate you giving us the chance to show our value to you tonight. And we hope you consider a digital subscription to the Democrat Chronicle, the News Journal, the Asbury Park Press, the Bergen Record, or the York Daily Record. Journalists in those markets coach tonight's storytellers. Next up, we have our fifth and final storyteller, Kia.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Kia, how are you?
I'm well, so Aurora, how are you?
I'm good. By the way, everyone, Kia is a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and so am I. I'm so happy that she is here. Kia is going to share a very interesting story about a journey. Take it away, Kia.
All right, so I'm here to share my fitness and weight loss journey. As a child, a young adolescent, I was often called names with regards to my size. I was called big bone, also called hips and lips, chicken legs, and that's just to name a few. So going to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade and then on to high school. But I'll start with Catholic school because we had to wear this awful looking gym uniform. First of all, the colors were yellow and brown plaid, which so ugly to me. The gym shorts were very short and it made me self-conscious because of my legs. I always had big hips. And I just really felt uncomfortable. Sometimes I would make up excuses as far as not attending gym class or forgetting my gym uniform on purpose because of those reasons. Fast forward to high school, pretty much the same thing, names being called. Oftentimes, I would think of it as being, people are trying to be friendly, create friendships or whatever. But in the back of my mind, it really stuck and really hurt my feelings somewhat, because I knew, regardless of my size, I always carried myself well and presented myself well, but I didn't really want it to be the size that I was per se. Fast forwarding to college, same thing. Sometimes being called names or just people saying different things about me. But oftentimes I would just kind of shrug it off. And again, like I said, just felt as though people were trying to make friends, build friendships, or what have you. So after graduating from college, I became a wife and became a mother. And then I just, was what was important to me, or still is important, but I was more so focused on being the best mother and being the best wife that I could. So fast forward about 14 years later, one day I was sitting at home, and I believe I was home by myself, and I went to sit on the sofa and I tried to cross my legs, and I couldn't cross my legs. And I'm like, wow, like that's, I didn't like that. That didn't sit well with me, because I feel like as a woman, I should be able to cross my legs if I desire or if the need arises. And I knew I had to do something about it. In addition to that, I would also have like frequent right knee pain. And I wasn't participating in any sports or didn't have any, injuries or do anything that necessarily caused me to have that pain. So I knew it had to be my weight. So at that moment in time, I said, like I said, I had to do something about it. So I started going to my local gym, the YMCA, and I started there with just going into the fitness center, trying to get, familiar, get acclimated with the equipment and everything. So, I did that repetitively, a lot of cardio, using cardio equipment and everything, and trying to build, friendships and just, get familiar with the gym and just fitness overall. So what do you know? What did I do to have everything basically take off, to excel? So I found out about group fitness classes and found out about Zumba. Like, Zumba, okay, that sounds interesting. And because I love to dance and dance infused my soul and music makes me happy, I was like, this is perfect. So I attended my first Zumba class with one of my favorite instructors. And oh my goodness, let me tell you, that's just where I really started to blossom and really gain confidence, because I just felt like I was dancing. But in addition to that, I was burning massive calories, and that's when my weight started to drop. So I started out at about 254 pounds at my highest weight. And Zumba, I did, started taking Zumba classes. And then from one favorite Zumba instructor, I gained about 2 or 3. So I would go to probably 2 or 3 different YMCA locations just to attend, those classes and to see those instructors. So I did Zumba for a while, dropped probably about 20 pounds or so. And then I knew I had to start doing something else, because my weight became stagnant. And in addition to that, in places that I lost the weight, I was starting to get like very loose skin, flabby, as some people would say. So then that's when I started to incorporate other classes, such as like body pump, which is strength training, body combat, also HIIT, high intensity interval training classes, and also spinning. So those are the things that I did to basically, curtail, the name calling, and to help with, me feeling better physically and also mentally as well, and to also help with building confidence. So the most important thing the change that I made was with my nutrition. And I started off with like small changes, and which was, I would say, cutting out soda. If I did have a soda, it would be a Sprite. Trying to drink more water, and then also making sure I ate like the traditional like fruit, balance your fruits and vegetables, like 3 fruits a day, 2 vegetables, or two fruits, three vegetables, or what have you. So then after that, with the whole nutrition piece, and the fitness is excelling. I'm going to class, and really having a lot of more confidence, and really exploring like other fitness programs and different things. I really started to feel amazing. I still feel amazing till this date. Have more confidence, but I also experienced some struggles. Starting out, I used to always be the participant that was always in the back. Now you can't tell me anything, because I don't care if I'm new to class, never attended. I'm in the front. I attend the class with confidence, and if I don't know, I'm learning. I'm talking to people if I have questions, different things like that. So I did start with that struggle, as far as having that confidence, being the person in the back, or maybe skipping out on class early because I didn't want to do like the core portion of the class, or whatever it was that I felt as though that made it like very challenging, or that I couldn't get through. And also still sometimes nutrition, because it's not, with me, it's not perfect day every day. Still struggle with nutrition. Sometimes I might have a cheat meal, or eating a piece of candy or ice cream or something, something that I enjoy. So about how long did it take? Like I said, I started at about 254 pounds. Right now, weighing 189 pounds. So I've lost about 65 pounds within a matter of like 5 years. So I'm sure you guys probably have heard slow and steady wins the race. And I always say progress, not perfection, which is the case. Oh, wow, I just actually rhymed, and didn't, that wasn't intentional. So I would say, where am I now in my journey? Remaining consistent and dedicated, like I said, at 189 pounds. And I would also say that a great blessing is in the horizon for my family and I. Like I informed you guys and sharing about my fitness and weight loss journey, as far as the health and nutrition, but also with me sharing the love that I have for fashion as well. So I do have I have a firm belief that when a person looks good, they feel good. So when I attended these classes, such as definitely Zumba, because Zumba was just like, I just let go. I let loose. I was in my happy place. That's when I really started to build a lot of confidence. And I was just like, just feeling great. And still, like I said, to date, still feel great. But I would show up and I would be fashionable. I mean, like I said, I haven't met anyone who doesn't, when they look good, they feel good. So, I have my matching gym outfit on, my athletic wear, fitness wear, athleisure, however you want to classify it. And then also rewarding myself as well for, just small goals, maybe, buying a new athletic attire or a pair of sneakers or something like that. But I always showed up, and I always showed up looking well, even when I didn't necessarily feel 100%. So the great horizon is, like I said, the blessing that is in the works for my family and I, and it's with regards to me and my family launching Body Build Fitness. So, and that's about me and us basically sharing the love that we have for health, fitness, and fashion, and sharing that with the world, and also encouraging and inspiring others. And I just want to let everyone know that it's, about, like I said, slow and steady wins the race, but it's also about being consistent in addition to, the dedication and determination, all of those things. So I do always encourage and inspire, but definitely encourage to practice self-care, be intentional, with your self-care and, with self-love as well. So stay tuned for Body Build Fitness. And that's my story.
Wow, Kia, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. We appreciate it.
welcome.
And good luck on your business and the great things on the horizon for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have reached the end of our Storytellers show. Thank you so much for spending this, almost an hour with us and to opening your hearts to the stories that you heard tonight. We hope that you will tune in to other Storytellers Project shows coming up. And before we say goodbye, let's bring our tellers up to wave and say bye to you one more time. Kevin, Kaiti, Natalia, Scott, and Kia. Thank you all, Storytellers.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, viewers.